The massive ice sculpture in the center of the museum's great hall glittered like a diamond mountain under the skylights, refracting the gala's purple mood lighting across a floor that usually hosted quiet school tours. I adjusted the velvet rope near the VIP section, my fingers trembling. Not from the air conditioning blasting through the vents, but from the notification pulsating on my screen. Can't wait for our moment at midnight. Be ready, Clara. It was from Julian, my boyfriend of 8 months. The man I was planning to finally say, I love you to tonight. When the clock hit 12, marking the summer solstice, I thought my life was going to change. And the man who had no idea I'd been picking up overtime shifts at the gallery for 3 months just to afford the emerald silk gown I had stashed in the break room? He was supposed to be the reason why. He told me this dress would finally make me look like I belonged in his high-stakes investment world, that I should have seen the warning signs. They were waving like giant neon banners. Clara, table 4 needs a refill on the vintage red. Sam appeared at my elbow. He was the head of event security and the closest thing I had to a brother in this massive, lonely city. And seriously, he muttered, leaning in so the donors couldn't hear, stop staring at your phone. If Julian actually cared about tonight, he'd be standing here, not texting you from whatever private box he bribed his way into. Sam wasn't wrong. Julian had promised to meet me right when my shift ended at 11:30. Giving us just enough time to sneak out to the museum's balcony garden before the solstice fireworks. But lately, he'd been a ghost. Canceled dates, calls taken in hushed whispers behind closed doors, perfume on his collar that he laughed off as overzealous clients. I swallowed every single lie because the alternative meant admitting I'd wasted almost a year on a guy who treated me like a placeholder. He's busy, I said, the words tasting like ash. Mergers and acquisitions are chaotic. Sam rolled his eyes. Kid, the only thing chaotic about Julian Vance is how he keeps his stories straight. Before I could snap back or admit defeat, the atmosphere in the great hall changed. The chatter didn't stop, it just dropped. It was the way the savannah goes silent when a lion steps out of the tall grass. I looked up from the ice sculpture and felt the oxygen vanish from the room. Nikolai Volkov had walked in. I'd worked the gallery circuit long enough to know the food chain of power that walked these floors. There were the tech bros throwing money around to look important. There were the old aristocrats who looked at everyone with bored disdain. And then there was Nikolai Volkov. He was a species entirely his own. A man whose silence was louder than a scream. His charcoal suit was tailored to within an inch of its life, likely costing more than my student loans. And his reputation arrived about 10 seconds before he did. Owner of the biggest shipping fleet in the hemisphere. Silent backer of tech startups, casinos, and politicians. And, if the rumors in the break room were true, the head of a syndicate that controlled the city's ports with an iron grip. He was lethal. Everyone knew it. No one whispered it. And he was walking in a straight line toward me. Ms. Hayes. His voice was deep, textured like gravel over velvet, with an accent that hinted at cold winters in the East. I believe we share a mutual acquaintance. Hearing my name in his voice felt like a violation and a caress all at once that I had never spoken to Nikolai Volkov. I'd never been within 20 yards of him during the few galas he actually attended. I had certainly never done anything to end up on his radar. I think you've mistaken me for someone else, Mr. Volkov, I said, keeping my customer service smile plastered on, even though my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Julian. He said the name like it was something rotten he wanted to spit out. Your boyfriend. Or should I say, my liability. The lights of the gala blurred. Julian works in finance. He's an investment banker. He works for me. Nikolai's steel-gray eyes locked onto mine. Unwavering. Terrifying. I felt stripped bare. And he has been stealing from me for 6 months. Skimming off the top of logistical accounts. Small fractions at first. He took a step closer. Then he got arrogant. 3 million in bearer bonds vanished from a secure vault last week. The marble floor felt like it was tilting. That's insane, I whispered. Julian wouldn't. Julian isn't. Julian is a grifter, Nikolai said, his tone flat, clinical. who targets women with access to specific security protocols. His words were surgical knives cutting through my denial. You work at the museum where I store private assets in the basement vault. I keep a secure lockbox in the climate-controlled archives for sensitive documents. Coincidentally, a digital key fob went missing from the curator's office 3 weeks ago. The same week Julian started asking you about your shift rotations and which security cameras had blind spots. Sam's hand gripped my arm, steadying me. Around us, the party raged on, diamonds sparkling and laughter ringing out, completely oblivious to my world shattering into dust. I never gave him anything, I said, my voice barely audible. I would never. I know. Something in Nikolai's expression shifted. A crack in the ice. Which is why you aren't currently being escorted out by my men, he continued. But Julian is running out of time. He knows I found the leak, and terrified men do stupid things to the people they claim to love. My phone buzzed against my hip. Another text from Julian. Change of plan. Meet me at the loading dock, level B2. Hurry. Nikolai's eyes flicked to my pocket, then back to my eyes. Don't go. It wasn't an order. It was a warning. He's my boyfriend, I said, even as the doubt began to strangle me. If he's in trouble, maybe I can talk to him. Maybe there's a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding is that you think he loves you. Nikolai moved closer. His presence was overwhelming, a force of nature that had nothing to do with physical size. He is planning to use you as a human shield or a scapegoat. Likely both. The ice sculpture reflected in Nikolai's eyes looked like frozen daggers. Around us, the countdown clock on the wall projected. 45 minutes to Solstice. 45 minutes until I was supposed to be in that dress, kissing Julian. Why do you care? The question slipped out before I could filter it. Nikolai went silent for a long beat, his gaze tracing my face like he was memorizing a map. Because you were working the coat check 3 months ago during the winter fundraiser. And when one of my associates grabbed your wrist because he couldn't find his ticket, you didn't flinch. You stared him down with more dignity than men who run countries. Because I know you work 2 jobs to pay off your dad's medical bills and you never complain. Because Julian Vance is a parasite, and you deserve better than being the collateral damage in his execution. He had noticed me. He had been watching. It should have been creepy. Instead, it felt like being seen. Really seen. For the first time in forever. My phone chimed again. Where are you, Clara? I'm waiting. What happens if I don't go? I asked. You stay here, under my protection. And when Julian realizes you aren't coming, he will panic. He will make a mistake. Nikolai extended his hand, palm up. An offer. Let me handle him. And if I go? His jaw tightened. A muscle feathered in his cheek. Then I follow you, to ensure you survive his stupidity. But I would prefer you choose the option that doesn't force me to eliminate your boyfriend in a loading dock on the summer solstice. The casual way he said eliminate should have sent me sprinting for the exit. But I stood there, thinking about the canceled dates, the lipstick stains, the way Julian made me feel small, grateful for scraps of affection. I thought about Sam's warnings. I thought about my own gut instinct I'd been ignoring for months. I placed my phone in Nikolai's hand. Good girl, he murmured. The words sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with fear. He slid my phone into his jacket and turned to Sam. Take her to the penthouse suite across the street. The code is your birthday, Ms. Hayes. How do you know my birthday? But even as I asked, I knew. Nikolai Volkov made it his business to know things. I know everything about the people who interest me. His thumb brushed across my knuckles before he let go. Go. Stay there until I come for you. And Julian? Nikolai's smile was terrifyingly cold. He won't be celebrating the solstice with you, or anyone else. The elevator ride to the penthouse across the street was silent, the kind of silence that rings in your ears. Sam punched in the code, my birthday apparently, and the heavy doors slid open and I expected a sterile safe house. Maybe a bachelor pad with too much chrome and black leather. I didn't expect a home. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city skyline, turning the chaos of downtown into a glittering, silent movie. But inside, it was warm. Walnut bookshelves overflowing with hardcovers. A vintage turntable in the corner. A cashmere throw tossed carelessly over a velvet armchair. This wasn't just where Nikolai Volkov slept. This was where he lived. Jesus, Sam exhaled, setting his security radio on the marble island. I've worked the perimeter of this building for 3 years. Never knew this was up here. I walked to the glass. Somewhere down there, in the dark concrete belly of the museum's loading dock, Julian was waiting, checking his watch, maybe typing out another lie to lure me into the dark. Had he ever loved me? Or was I just a convenient access code? A girl lonely enough to miss the red flags because she was too busy looking for a fairy tale. Clara. Sam appeared beside me, handing me a tumbler of amber liquid. Drink. You're shaking. I don't know what I am, I whispered. I took the glass but didn't drink. 6 hours ago, I was worried about my hair frizzing in the humidity. Now I'm hiding in a crime lord's fortress while he deals with my criminal boyfriend. Ex-boyfriend, Sam corrected gently. And honestly, this beats watching the board of directors get drunk on cheap Chardonnay. I let out a laugh. It sounded brittle, close to a sob, but it was real. What am I supposed to do now? Now? Sam clinked his glass against mine. We wait, and we hope Nikolai Volkov is as good at damage control as he is at scaring the hell out of people. The elevator chimed. We both froze. The doors glided open, and Nikolai stepped out. His suit jacket was gone. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to his elbows. And there, stark against the pale skin of his cheekbone, was a thin, angry cut that was already swelling. Is he? I couldn't finish the sentence. Alive? Nikolai walked to the bar, poured 2 fingers of vodka, and downed it like it was water. In police custody, he said, his voice rougher than before. Turns out, Julian kept quite a scrapbook in the trunk of his car. Stolen bearer bonds, blueprints of my shipping terminals, and a loaded pistol he intended to use to persuade you to open the archival vault. The glass trembled in my hand. Sam took it from me before I could drop it. You were right, I said, my voice numb. About everything. I wish I had been wrong. Nikolai crossed the room to where I stood. Up close, I could see the violence radiating off him like heat. Bruised knuckles, that cut on his cheek. A shadow in his eyes that suggested Julian had experienced a very bad night before the sirens arrived. He said things about you, Nikolai said quietly. Things I won't repeat because they are beneath you. What kind of things? The kind that prove he never saw you at all. He reached out, moving slowly enough to give me time to flinch or step back. When I didn't, his fingers brushed a stray tear from my jawline. You are safe now, Clara. That is all that matters. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt hollowed out. The space where I thought my future lived was just a gaping hole. Why does safe feel so terrible? Because the danger was familiar, Nikolai said. His thumb traced my cheekbone, his touch shockingly gentle for a man with blood on his knuckles. Safety is new, unfamiliar. It takes time to trust it. Beyond the glass, a stray firework from the early Solstice celebrations flared gold. Sam cleared his throat by the door. I'm going to head back to the venue, he said, already backing toward the elevator. I'll cover your absence in the logs, Clara. Sam, you don't have to. Kid, you just found out your life was a heist movie. Take the night off. He hit the button, then paused, looking from me to Nikolai. Besides, I think you're in good hands. The doors closed, leaving me alone in the sky with Nikolai Volkov and the wreckage of my year. Sit, he said. You look like you're about to collapse. He was right. The adrenaline crash hit me like a wave. He guided me to the sofa and draped that cashmere throw over my shoulders, treating me like I was made of spun glass. I still don't understand why you helped me, I said as he sat on the coffee table opposite me, close enough that I could smell rain, expensive tobacco, and something metallic. You don't know me. I know enough. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I know you send half your paycheck to your father's rehab center every month, even though it means you eat instant oatmeal for dinner. I know you read classic literature on your lunch breaks and hide the covers so the curators don't think you're slacking off. Heat rushed to my face. You really have been watching me? Yes. No apology. Just the truth. Why? Nikolai looked down at his hands, then back at me, his gaze intense. 3 months ago, the winter fundraiser. You were working the coat check. A donor lost his ticket. He was drunk, entitled, and he grabbed your wrist. He called you girl and demanded you find his coat immediately. I remembered. The guy had been a nightmare. I found his coat, I whispered. I apologized. You found his coat, Nikolai agreed. But first you looked him dead in the eye. You didn't pull away, you didn't scream. You just held his gaze with this absolute, icy silence until he let go of you. Then you handed him his coat with such perfect, poisonous politeness that he looked like a fool in front of everyone. A small smile touched Nikolai's lips. I thought, there is someone who knows that power doesn't always have to shout. My heart did a traitorous flip in my chest. That's why you noticed me? Because I didn't cause a scene? I noticed you because you reminded me that dignity isn't something you buy. It's something you are. He reached out, taking my hand. His skin was warm, his grip steady. And I kept watching because I wanted to understand why a woman with that much fire was dimming her light for a man like Julian. You mean a con artist? I mean a mediocrity, Nikolai corrected. Someone who made you feel like you had to audition for his love. His thumb brushed the pulse point on my wrist. The sensation was electric. Including me, if I have made you feel unsafe tonight. The vulnerability in his voice. This man who commanded armies of dockworkers and scared politicians. Undid me. You saved me tonight, I said. That's not the same as hurting me, isn't it? He touched the bruise on his own face. I dragged you into my world. I exposed you to violence. I shattered your trust in the man you thought you loved. Would you have let me walk into that loading dock if I insisted? No. The answer was instant. I would have tied you to a chair before I let you walk into a trap. I should have been terrified. Instead, I found myself leaning closer to the fire. What happens now? I asked. Nikolai checked the antique clock on the wall. We have 15 minutes until midnight. The solstice. You were supposed to spend it with Julian, starting a new life built on lies. He stood up, pulling me gently to my feet. Instead, you are here, safe, free. He led me to the window. Below us, the city was gathering. The energy of the longest day of the year was vibrating through the glass. You have a choice, Clara, he said, his voice low against my ear. You can leave, walk out that door, go home, and never see me again. I will ensure Julian's associates never bother you. Your debt is paid. Your life goes back to normal. That's one option, I breathed. My skin was prickling where he stood behind me. What's the other? His hands settled on my shoulders. Heavy. Possessive. You stay. Let me take you to dinner tomorrow. Let me show you what it looks like when a man treats you like you are the prize, not the stepping stone. Let me. He hesitated. Let me earn the chance to know you. Really know you. I turned in his arms. We were inches apart. I could see the flecks of silver in his gray eyes. You're a dangerous man, Nikolai Volkov. Extremely. Your world isn't safe. No, but I am. For you. He cupped my face. I cannot promise you a white picket fence, but I can promise that you will never, ever wonder if you matter. The digital clock on the oven blinked. 11:50 p.m. 10 minutes to midnight. I barely know you, I said. Then let's change that. His thumb grazed my lower lip. Starting now. Starting with you making a choice that is entirely yours. What do you want, Clara? What did I want? For 8 months, I wanted Julian to pick me. Before that, I wanted my dad to get better. I wanted to be enough. But standing here, with the city beneath us and the most dangerous man in the city looking at me like I was the only source of light in the room, I want. My voice broke. I want to stop feeling invisible. I want someone to see me and not look away. Nikolai's expression fractured. It wasn't pity. It was recognition. Then let me make you a promise, Clara Hayes. He leaned in, his forehead resting against mine. You will never be invisible to me. You will matter every single day. And you will always belong to yourself first. I don't want a subordinate. I want a partner. Someone who challenges me. He smiled, and it changed his entire face from terrifying to devastating. I know you're brave enough to trust a crime lord. I know you're strong enough to survive heartbreak. And you make me want to be the kind of man who deserves you. The clock ticked. 11:55 p.m. One dinner, I said, felt like jumping off a cliff. Tomorrow night. Somewhere that doesn't have a VIP section. Anywhere you want. And you answer my questions. All of them. About the business. The rumors. His face grew serious. Some of those answers will scare you. Then I'll decide if I'm scared. I moved closer, closing the gap. But no more lies. I need the truth. Even if it's ugly. Especially when it's ugly, he vowed. You have a deal. One dinner. Total honesty. And if you want to walk away after that, I let you go. You'd really let me go? A flash of pain crossed his eyes. Letting you go would ruin me, but keeping you against your will would ruin us. So yes. 11:58 p.m. The city below was quieting, holding its breath for the solstice midnight. In a movie, this is where he would kiss me. But Nikolai didn't move. He just held me, waiting. Ask me? I whispered, his eyes darkened. Clara? Can I kiss you when the clock strikes 12? Are you asking because you think you should? I am asking because I have wanted to kiss you since the moment you destroyed that donor with a look. Because I have spent 3 months wondering if you taste as sweet as you look. Because I can't think of a better way to start the summer. His hand slid into my hair. But only if you want it. 11:59 p.m. I stood on my tiptoes. I felt brave. I felt terrified. I felt real. Yes. Yes to the kiss or yes to dinner? Yes to the kiss. I smiled against his mouth. Dinner? We'll negotiate that tomorrow. Right now, I said. I want to start the new season kissing someone who actually sees me. I see you, Clara, he rasped. Below us, the first fireworks of the solstice whistled into the air. Midnight. Happy solstice, Clara. His mouth found mine as the sky exploded in gold and violet. The fireworks faded, but the ringing in my ears didn't. When we finally broke apart, I was gripping the lapels of his shirt like they were the only thing keeping me upright. Well, I managed, breathless. That was insufficient, Nikolai finished for me. His forehead rested against mine. Entirely insufficient. I am going to need to kiss you approximately 1,000 more times before I even begin to get it out of my system. I laughed, a surprised, genuine sound. 1,000? That's a lot of math. I'm a man of logistics. His thumb traced my lower lip. Though I suspect 1,000 won't be enough either. I might need a lifetime. You barely know me. I reminded him, retreating to my earlier defense. Then let's change that. He stepped back, his expression shifting from lover to strategist. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. I pick you up. Wear something comfortable. You know where I live. He had the grace to look slightly guilty. I know where you live. I know you drink your oat milk lattes extra hot. I know you volunteer at the dog shelter on Sunday mornings because you miss the retriever you grew up with. That's. I searched for the word. Stalking. That is definitely stalking, Nikolai. It is thorough due diligence on a high-value acquisition, he countered, though his eyes were smiling. In my defense, I was planning to ask you out like a normal person. Julian just accelerated the timeline. Extremely inconvenient of him. I murmured. Go to sleep, Clara. He pointed toward a hallway. Guest room is the second door on the left. My housekeeper keeps emergency supplies. There should be clean clothes. And you? I'll be on the couch, guarding the perimeter. The guest room was nicer than my entire apartment. High thread count sheets, blackout curtains, and a bathroom that looked like a spa. Laid out on the bed was a soft t-shirt that smelled like sandalwood and rain, his scent. I fell asleep thinking about logistics, and kisses, and how danger felt surprisingly like home. That I woke up to the smell of coffee and bacon? The clock read 10:45 a.m. I hadn't slept that late in years. I found Nikolai in the kitchen. He was wearing dark jeans and a navy sweater, looking less like a crime boss and more like a guy in a coffee commercial. He was flipping pancakes. Good morning. He slid a mug across the counter. Extra hot. Oat milk. I could get used to this, I admitted, taking a sip. But I'm not a coward. I didn't sneak out. No, you aren't. He plated the pancakes, perfectly golden circles. Which is why I'm hoping you'll still have dinner with me tonight. I sat at the island. Tell me something true, I said, before we go any further. Tell me something you don't tell the donors at the galas. He stopped moving. He leaned back against the counter, crossing his arms. I was 7, he began, when I realized my father's shipping business wasn't just about crates. We were at the docks. I watched him hand an envelope of cash to a union foreman. My father told me it was insurance, a guarantee that the cranes wouldn't break down, that the cargo wouldn't accidentally fall into the harbor. He took a slow sip of his black coffee. I asked him who we were protecting the cargo from. He said, from people like us. If they don't get paid. The pancakes suddenly looked heavy. Did that scare you? I asked. Terrified me, he said quietly. For years I thought we were the villains, the monsters under the bed. Then I grew up. I took over. And I realized the world isn't black and white. That foreman? He was being squeezed by a rival syndicate from across the river. Violent men who burned down warehouses for fun. My father's insurance was the only thing keeping the dockworkers safe. He met my eyes. I don't extort people, Clara. I don't prey on the weak. I operate in the gray. I keep the balance. I ensure that the chaos stays organized. And if I date you, I asked, do I become part of the gray? You become part of my life, Nikolai said firmly. You will see things. You will know things. But I will never ask you to compromise your soul. That's a pretty promise. It's the truth. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was Sam. 17 missed calls. I called him, Nikolai said before I could panic. I told him you had a family emergency and needed a few days off. I covered your shifts. You can't just. I can. And I did. He looked unapologetic. You needed rest. I should have been angry at the control, but it felt caring. You're very bossy, I said, smiling despite myself. I'm a work in progress. At 7 p.m. he picked me up. He wasn't driving the armored SUV. He was in a vintage sedan, something classic and understated. He drove us away from the glittering skyline into a neighborhood I rarely visited. Old brick buildings, narrow streets. He pulled up to a tiny, hole-in-the-wall Polish restaurant. The sign was flickering. This is it, I asked. Best pierogies in the city. The owner, a giant man named Lev with flour on his apron, roared when he saw Nikolai. He hugged him like a long-lost son. Nikolai, you didn't call. We are packed. I know, Leviticus. I was hoping for the family table. Lev looked at me, then back at Nikolai and winked. He led us through the crowded dining room, past the noisy tables, right into the kitchen. There was a tiny two-top table tucked in the corner, between a stack of flour sacks and the prep station. The worst seat in the house, Nikolai said as we sat down. It was loud, hot, and smelled like butter and onions. It was perfect. This is a test, isn't it? I asked as he poured wine from a carafe. To see if I'm the kind of girl who needs the white tablecloth. You passed, he grinned. Real food is better than a view. Over dinner, he told me everything. About his mother who died when he was young. About the choice he made to modernize the business, to move away from the brutal tactics of his father. I told him about my dad. About the debts. About feeling like I had to carry the world on my shoulders. You don't have to carry it alone anymore, he said. He stood up in the cramped kitchen. Dance with me. There's no music. There's always music. He hummed a low tune, pulling me close. We swayed between the stoves and the sinks, while the chefs laughed and Lev clapped his hands. I'm falling for you, I whispered into his chest. And it's terrifying. Good, he said. Fear keeps us sharp. 6 months later, the elevator opened to the penthouse, but it didn't look like a bachelor pad anymore. My books were stacked on the coffee table. My yoga mat was rolled up in the corner. Why are we here? I asked. We had just come from a gala at the museum, the same room where we met. Because 6 months ago you made a choice, Nikolai said. He walked me to the window. I have a proposition. My heart skipped a beat. Move in with me. He turned me to face him. Not because I want to keep an eye on you, but because I hate waking up without you. I want to build a life that is ours. We can redecorate. We can buy a house in the suburbs if you want. I don't care where we are, as long as you are there. What about the danger? I asked. The gray? I protect what is mine, he said fiercely. Always. There will be risks. I won't lie, but you will never face them alone. I looked at the city below. I thought about the safe, boring life I could have had with someone else. And I thought about the last 6 months. The honesty, the passion, the way he looked at me like I was the only person in the world. Yes, I said. He kissed me deep and claiming. Then, he pressed a small velvet box into my hand. Not a proposal, he quickly added, seeing my eyes widen. Not yet, but a promise. Inside was a simple silver ring. My mother's, he said. It means your family. It means you're permanent. I slid it onto my finger. Fit perfectly. Thank you, I whispered, for not letting me start the new year with him. Thank you, he replied, resting his chin on my head as we looked out at our city. For giving the villain a chance to be the hero. We stood there as the city lights twinkled on. 2 complicated people building something simple and real. Dangerous? Maybe. Worth it? Absolutely.